The Irish War of Independence was a guerrilla conflict between the British state and the island of Ireland. While it officially began in 1919 and ended in 1921, violence began before and after these years. The war began the day the Dáil first met, on the 21st of January 1919. Two RIC constables were shot dead by the Irish Volunteers under Danbreen in County Tipperary, and the explosives they were carrying were seized. This is presented as the opening shots of the war, but there were deaths in 1918. In Dublin, Michael Collins, the IRA Director of Intelligence, formed a squad to assassinate detectives who coordinated the arrests of Republican activists. Along with an armed campaign, there was passive resistance to British rule, including hunger strikes by prisoners and boycotts. There were also significant disturbances in rural areas, as small farmers attempted to seize parts of large ranches. Violence intensified in 1920. Much of Sinn Féin were arrested. Eamon de Valera, the President of the Republic, went to the United States to raise funds. The two leaders of the IRA, Collins and Richard Mulcahy, ordered volunteer units to raid RIC barracks for arms. After a series of attacks on rural police barracks ensued in 1920, the RIC withdrew from the smaller stations into fortified barracks in towns which were systematically burnt by the IRA around the country. By the summer of 1920, many RIC constables were resigning from their posts. In response to the attacks on them, the RIC assassinated high-profile Republicans such as Thomas McCurtain, the Lord Mayor of Cork. In the summer of 1920, Sinn Féin won local government elections across the country and took over the functions of government from the state, such as tax collection and law enforcement. In some places, the Republicans took control of the police force and the court systems as well. The British government, led by Prime Minister Lloyd George, proposed two autonomous governments, one in the north and one in the south of Ireland. They also deployed new paramilitary forces to Ireland. They were known as the Black and Tans and Auxiliaries, made up of war veterans from the First World War. Lloyd George also passed the Restoration of Order in Ireland Act, giving special powers to the police and military. The arrival of the Black and Tans and Auxiliaries in Ireland triggered an escalation of the conflict, as the new forces carried out revenge on the civilian population for IRA attacks, such as burning extensive parts of different towns. In response to this, the IRA formed the full-time flying columns. These were small, independent military land units capable of rapid mobility and had arms. These columns were ruthless and efficient guerrilla warfare. In the north of Ireland, there was rioting in Belfast, Derry and Lisburn after the IRA killed two Protestant police officers in separate attacks. This led to loyalists attacking Catholic areas, killing up to 100 people and burning Catholics out of their homes. Another 7,000 Catholics were expelled from their jobs in British shipyards. The Northern Ireland authorities formed the Ulster Special Constabulary as an armed unionist police force. Autumn and winter of 1920 saw ruthlessness on both sides. On the 21st of November 1920, IRA units in Dublin launched a mass assassination attack on British intelligence officers, killing 14 men. In revenge, the Black and Tans and Auxiliaries shot dead 15 civilians at a football match in Croke Park, which became known as Bloody Sunday. A week later, a patrol of 17 auxiliaries were wiped out in an IRA ambush in County Cork, and shortly after that, Cork city centre was destroyed in a fire set by the British forces. By the end of 1920, 500 people had been killed. The Irish forces attempted to call a truce in December, but it was prevented by the British government, who insisted that the IRA surrender their weapons first. In the first 6 months of 1921, around 1,000 people were killed in the fighting, with the most intense fighting being in Dublin City, Munster and Belfast. In addition, 6,000 Republicans were imprisoned. Martial law was declared in Munster, with more British troops being deployed. They led sweeps across the countryside, burning houses and holding executions in response to IRA attacks. The IRA retaliated by shooting informers, extending attacks to off-duty British personnel, and burning the property of loyalists. When the British began executing prisoners, the IRA began shooting captured British soldiers and police. By the summer of 1921, the IRA were short on ammunition and weapons, and many of their fighters were imprisoned or injured. British forces were urged to stop fighting as international pressure mounted. The fighting was brought to an end on the 11th of July 1921 with a truce negotiated between both sides, so that talks on a political settlement could start. However, in the north, the second half of 1921 was more violent than the first half, with extensive fighting between Republicans and Loyalists, Catholics and Protestants. The truce allowed the IRA to regroup, recruit and train openly, with many of their forces believing that the truce was just temporary.